ancestral arms of the god Baal-Hamon. The children were offered to secure victory in war or bring prosperity to their families. Second, thousands of tiny cremated remains have been found in sacred cemeteries called TOPETs. These burial grounds prove the practice was organized and happened regularly across Carthaginian territories. Third, families turned to child sacrifice during major crises like military defeats or natural disasters. The goddess Tanit was believed to demand the ultimate price for divine intervention. Fourth, even the brutal Romans were shocked by these rituals and used them as propaganda against Carthage. Fifth, high-temperature cremation evidence shows babies were burned alive, not killed first. The archaeological proof confirms the horrifying accounts written by ancient historians. This practice continued for centuries until Rome finally destroyed Carthage. Here are 5 things you didn't know about Carthaginian child sacrifice.
Did you know that the ancient Phoenicians practiced a horrifying ritual? A chilling truth that has remained hidden for centuries, the Phoenician child sacrifice ritual. The Phoenicians, a seafaring civilization renowned for their trade and influence, held a dark secret at the heart of their religious beliefs. At specific times, they believed they needed to appease their gods through the ultimate sacrifice, the blood of innocent children. Archaeological evidence reveals the existence of altars specifically designed for these sacrifices. These altars were adorned with grotesque carvings and bore the stains of innocent blood. The tools used in these rituals, including sickles and knives, were discovered alongside the remains of these young victims. It is believed that the Phoenician priests, adorned in intricate ceremonial garments, conducted these sacrifices. These religious authorities were responsible for transporting these terrified children to the altars, where they would perform unspeakable acts in the name of their deities. Did you know that the ancient Phoenicians practiced a horrifying ritual? A chilling truth.
Who are the Ammonites in Scripture? So the Ammonites are one of the more wicked tribes that you'll find, and they go throughout the entirety of the Old Testament. They are savage, they are awful, but they stem from the time that Lot's daughters take advantage of him. And it's an incestuous union where they come forth. The son is named Ben-Ami, and from him come the Ammonites. And I want to read to you a couple of things about the Ammonites. They worshipped a god that required child sacrifice. So they're like an abomination to the Lord. But listen to this. This comes from Amos 1:13. It says, 3 transgressions of the Ammonites, and for 4 I will not revoke the punishment, because they have ripped open pregnant women in Gilead, that they might enlarge their border. So they weren't just sacrificing their own children. They were going to their enemies and ripping open their pregnant bellies and sacrificing the children of their enemies. To give you some bit of context for how wicked these people are that come from the union of Lot and his daughters, the Ammonites are going to be a plague upon the people of God for the entirety of the Old Testament. Who are the Ammonites in Scripture? So the Ammonites are one of the more wicked tribes that you'll find, and they go throughout the entirety of the Old Testament. They are savage.
This practice of child sacrifice never really went away all through the original years that Israel and later Judah were in the land. From time to time, it would get stomped out, but it just kept creeping back into popular use. Even King Solomon got involved with this crazy practice later in his life, which really made God mad. Child sacrifice is one of the reasons that Israel and Judah were defeated and taken into captivity, according to Jeremiah 32:35-36. This practice of child sacrifice never really went away all through the...
Diba? Oh, child sacrifice, diba? Ayaw niyo maniwala eh.
We see what we call an economically driven sacrifice. Example, at like the TOPET at Carthage. And a TOPET is a place where child sacrifice was done. Early on, the TOPET at Carthage, the earliest remains at Carthage were basically faunal remains like deer, goats, cattle, animal remains. We also know that those early graves of that period, there was lots of malnutrition. As the people of Carthage became more prosperous, it was only then they started doing child sacrifice. So one of the conclusions that archaeologists draw from this is that child sacrifice is a means to secure one's socio-economic prosperity. We see what we call an economically driven sacrifice. example, at like the TOPET at Carthage.
Oh, nagcha-child sacrifice sila para magkaroon sila ng prosperity o yung prosperity gospel. O yung nagga-gospel sila para magkaroon sila ng kaunlaran. O yan, magkaroon sila ng kayamanan, yumaman sila, child sacrifice sila. So, yung child sacrifice, demonyo yan. Gawain niya ng mga demonyo. O, kaya kung sino man yung nagpaparaan ng anak niya dyan sa apoy, o, di ba, pag may naglilibing, nagagawa sila ng apoy, tapos ipaparaanin nila yung bata sa apoy, di ba? Yung sa paglilibing usually ganun eh. Pinapadaan yung bata sa apoy at saka pinapadaan din sa kabaong. O kaya yan, mga pagano. Kaya huwag kayo diyan gumagawa ng mga ganyan. Gawain niya ng mga kademonyuhan, mga karumal-dumal yan. Ito pa.
The Abraham-Isaac myth is a substitution story where they're saying, yes, in the past, we have sacrificed the firstborn of every womb, but now we don't need to do that. Stop, everybody. The religious reform here is stop doing that. We can instead have a substitute. We can use a young ram to do that. And indeed, the Passover story itself is also referencing this. So the firstborn is being killed by the destroying angel, everybody who hasn't sacrificed their firstborn. But if you take ram's blood and you put it over your door, that shows that you've done a substitute. And so then your firstborn is not going to be killed by Baal or Yahweh or the destroying angel by Mot or whoever the sacrifice is being to.
The historian Plutarch said that the Carthaginians practiced child sacrifice. In his book Moralia, the chapter on superstitions, he said that the Carthaginians, with full knowledge and understanding, offered up their own children, and those who had no children would buy little ones from poor people and cut their throats as if they were lambs or birds. Diodorus Siculus, another Greek historian, described that infants were burned alive in the arms of a bronze statue of Baal. The great Roman philosopher Cicero said that the Carthaginians consider it a pious act to sacrifice their children to Saturn. Greeks and Romans identified Baal with Kronos, or Saturn. Some say this was just propaganda from the Romans, since Carthage was its archenemy. But even the philosopher Porphyry of Tyre, who was from Phoenicia, confirms this tradition. He was not writing to glorify Rome, along the fact that Rome does not mention this about any other of its enemies, like the Gauls or the Persians. The Jews who were not fan of the Romans also mentioned child sacrifice in the Bible. Phoenicia, which is today Lebanon, was next to Israel and was part of the Canaanites tribes, especially Tyre and Sidon, where child sacrifice to Baal was very common. Even Tertullian, the North African Christian writer, claimed child sacrifice still occurred secretly in Carthage during his time. The final evidence to settle this claim was the archaeological excavations of Tophets in Carthage, where urns with cremated remains of infants marked with inscriptions to Baal were found. The historian Plutarch said that the Carthaginians
Kita nyo?
Hey everybody, the word Molek does not refer to a deity at all. It's just a generic noun that means offering and was associated with child sacrifice.
Molek.
We like thinking of it as a deity, however, because that obscures the likely original recipient of the sacrifices, the God of Israel. Hey everybody, the word Molek does not refer to a deity at all. It's just a generic noun that means offering and was associated with child sacrifice. We like thinking of it as a deity, however, because that obscures the likely original recipient of the sacrifices, the God of Israel. Hey everybody, the word Molek.
Diba?
The historian Plutarch
Astarte was a goddess of fertility and famous across the ancient world. Perched high on a mountain, Erice in Sicily was once the site of a shrine to Astarte. According to the Romans, behind these walls, the Phoenicians practiced a ritual of sacred prostitution. This Norman castle was built on the site where, in Phoenician times, the vast temple to Astarte stood. Gaia Savalio, is the author of a book about the Phoenicians in Sicily.
This is an extraordinarily mystical place. People flocked here from all over the Mediterranean, but it was kind of lured. And this was a place where sacred prostitution took place. And the prostitutes were girls from what we would say good family, offering their virginity to the goddess Astarte.
According to Roman and Greek historians, it was common practice among Phoenician aristocrats to bring their virgin daughters to the temple when they reached the age of puberty.
The girls had to go to the temple of Astarte and stay there and be laid with strange men.
The high priest would then force them to have sex with visiting foreigners, who paid the temple handsomely for the privilege.
The stranger was viewed as an emissary from the gods. After intercourse, the girl had made herself holy in the sight of Astarte and went away home.
So these very young girls were actual prisoners until they were deflowered. So the pretty girl could get home quite quickly after giving up their virginity, while the ugly one had to wait to be picked up.
According to Greek and Roman accounts, sacred prostitution took place in Cyprus, Tunisia, and Sicily. They claimed the Phoenicians exported their grotesque religious practices as they sailed across the Mediterranean and beyond. According to Greek and Roman accounts, sacred prostitution took place in Cyprus, Tunisia.
Excavations of ancient Israel have unearthed an abundance of pottery, remnants of ancient daily life. These vessels had a wide variety of uses, but perhaps its most unusual use was as an urn for infant remains.
פה זה למעשה כד קבורה בערך בין 6,000 שנה. מה שאנחנו יכולים לחפש פה זה עצמות של תינוק. אנחנו רואים שהכד...
To determine if this jar contains a 6,000-year-old baby, archaeologists must send it through a CT scan.
וואו, יפהפייה. איזה גולגולת. פנטסטי. הנה כאן אנחנו רואים את הגולגולת. כאן זה עמוד השדרה. והצלעות הן פה, וכאן זה האגן. אנחנו רואים פה את הטיביה. יש פה עוד טיביה.
נראה לי הירך.
וכאן הרגליים שלה בעצם מקופלות. הוא שוכב בתנוחה עוברית. המצב של העצמות הוא קטסטרופלי. אין שום סיכוי לעשות פה שחזור או רפאות. בסוף היום נצטרך פשוט לפרק את הכד הזה ולחפור את השלד החוצה.
Fortunately, all the pieces are here. They just need to be put back together. It's the first step in determining if this child was sacrificed. One of the greatest tales of sacrifice comes from the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac. The book of Genesis tells us that Abraham is God's most loyal follower. In return for his faith, God promises to make Abraham the father of many nations. But when God demands Abraham kill his son, Isaac, it goes against all his spiritual beliefs. Abraham faces an impossible choice. He must sacrifice his beloved son or defy his God. Our possible sacrificial child comes from some of the earliest ancient settlements in the Holy Land of Abraham, at a place called Fetzael. 6,000 years ago, this land was known as Canaan. According to biblical tradition, at the time Canaanites were living here, their tribes paid tributes to many gods with offerings of goats, sheep, and grain, and sometimes children.
1,900,000,000 people.
Naniniwala na kayo na totoo yung child sacrifice.
Following a faith that was born from a single night of desperation.
Ngayon, ayan, mga patotoo ko yan na talagang totoo na umiral yung child sacrifice, ha? Tandaan nyo yan, child sacrifice ay totoo. Totoong umiral yan, yung child sacrifice. Okay, babush.